Welcome to my podcast. Today's dream, tomorrow's reality. My name is Vickie Poole, and I'm a master transformational coach specializing in habit change. This podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach, and it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host. And I have a special guest with me today. I'll introduce in just a moment. But if you have any ahas, questions, appreciations, please leave a comment or a voice message. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this gentleman right here, we don't know each other very well, but his name is Evan Baumgardner. And we actually met in a class that we are both almost like a mastermind that we are in together. And we are learning so many better ways of utilizing our hypnosis and helping people. So I heard him talking on one of our little chats, and his story was so cool that I thought I've got to have him on a podcast. So this is where we are now. And so I want to let him just tell you really quick what kind of hypnosis that he does, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Vickie. I'm Evan Baumgardner. As she said, I'm a hypnotist. I specialize in helping people overcome anxiety, regain their confidence, and also move on from Bell's palsy and synkinesis. So those are the big things for me. As far as like what kind, we were talking about this before the recording, and there's so many different kinds of hypnosis. It's like all the different routes that you can take to get to the same place and doing what feels right. So I'm a big proponent of having a very deep hypnotic toolbox to go to.
It's the only way to do it, I think. Otherwise, you put yourself into a little tiny box and that's all you can do. And it's like some people need something that's over here and you're over here.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something I'm passionate about is this is the best job in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's fun. We get to help people at the end of the day and see massive changes happen. Things that people thought they would always have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And then almost like magic, ideally.
Yeah.
So, everybody's journey is a little different depending on what we're working on, but to see that go and then like that weight lift off of them is amazing. And I mean, that was something I went through myself, and that's what brought me here,
Right.
becoming a hypnotist.
So let's dive into that real quick. I know your journey with this began because of your Bell's palsy. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had Bell's palsy. This was it'll be 9 years ago in a couple of weeks. Actually, from here, it's December now. And when usually after a couple of weeks, the nerve heals and everything.
So well, let's stop real quick. So what causes Bell's palsy? Do you know? Is that something that you can share?
It's funny because there's a lot of different things.
Okay.
The key thing is there's a cranial nerve kind of like right at the below the ear, kind of back of the jaw thing that connects to like 5 different nerves in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And when that gets damaged somehow, whether that's from like a viral infection or whatever, stress seems to be a very common thing for it. It causes temporary facial paralysis until everything kind of heals and it goes back. Now, I was under a lot of stress at the time. Like I said, it was a couple weeks before Christmas. I was a freelance writer at the time. I had deadlines piling up. I was trying to get everything ready, and I just hunched over my keyboard, and not taking care of myself, pushing everything at, to both ends. Like I was just physically and emotionally exhausted
Right.
and not giving myself any rest. And then Bell's palsy happened. Just kind of out of the blue. I had this like pain in the neck for a few days that was slowing me down, which created more stress. And because it was so hard for me to actually work then, and then one day it went away. I'm like, oh, good. I'm thinking I had just been sleeping wrong
Mm-hmm.
as a result. And then, like that evening, all of a sudden, it's like my eye seemed to be blinking slower.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, that's kind of weird. So I'm like looking in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, all right. Why is my eye blinking out of sync with the other one? And then it was just this gradual thing over like 20 minutes where then that left side of my face was suddenly paralyzed.
Wow.
And
Were you alone? Was there anybody with you?
yeah, I had a friend of mine who was
So
here
they
watching the
noticed
whole
it
thing.
too?
Yeah, I'm like, are you seeing this? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so it
So it's not
really
my
is out of sync.
imagination.
Yeah. And so I mean, obviously that was stressful. But now here's the funny thing. And I go through all this because it's important to realize that 9 years ago, when this happened, stress was not a cause, according to
Oh.
doctors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they'd be like, no, it's not stress. No, can't be that. There's no link there. Now, the thing is, if you talk to people who've had Bell's palsy, if you go into like Bell's palsy support groups, you see things. Everybody that experiences it usually is under some form of stress, physical or emotional. Women, when they're pregnant, and especially in childbirth, will get it a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
that happens a lot. I'm like, well, look at that. That's an incredible amount of stress that the body's under at that point, both physically and emotionally, as you're bringing
Right.
another life into the world. There's a lot of changes happening, a lot of stress, and like I said, both physical and emotional stress. Now, here's funny in 2019. This is, remember, I want to say it was like October, so like months before a little thing happened that that changed everything. Harvard Medical came out and said, "Oh yeah, we found the link between stress and Bell's palsy."
Interesting.
And I'm like, oh, okay, see, I was right. And so now there is an actual link saying, yeah, stress can cause that. But before that, they wouldn't even consider
Yeah.
it. And
So is it okay if I share something with you real quick?
yeah.
My children's father, before we actually started dating or anything, he had Bell's palsy and he was doing a job that was really, really stressful at the time. But they said it was caused by an inner ear thing. But so it was one side of his face. And he actually had a little bit of problem with his arm and everything too. And he I forgot how long it lasted, but he got everything back, but one eye was just a little bit, it was like closed just a touch more. And I mean, it wasn't real noticeable unless you knew. But
Mm-hmm.
then when he didn't have a mustache, he wore a mustache all the time. But when he didn't have a mustache, you could see that when he smiled, one side, that one side did not smile the same. But that was the only thing that he had from it. But he said his was where he went to bed at night and then he woke up in the morning and he thought he had had a stroke because one side of his body felt different and one side of his face in particular, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
he recovered from it pretty much, with little telltale signs that most people didn't notice.
Yeah. And that's something like you, if you've had it, you can kind of notice when other people have had
Mm-hmm.
if you look closely, because like I said, it's putting everything back together. And
Right.
if it doesn't get put back together correctly, it's kind of like if you break a bottle or a lamp and you glue it back together, it's the same, but it's a little different at that point. You can tell something happened
Right.
to it. You're not going to fool anybody. And that's what happened to me. It's called synkinesis, which nobody really talks about that part of it, because it is pretty uncommon, thankfully.
So explain
I
what
mean,
that is.
it's one of those things where like spell check doesn't even
Yeah, yeah.
know how to check it. And so that's kind of where the nerve is healed, but everything is kind of out of place.
Okay, so it's
So
like it's all healed, but it's kind of just off kilter just a little.
yeah, so what happened to me was, okay, now like my eye would still pull shut. I don't have the same kind of full functionality in my mouth on that side that I had before.
Meaning you can't chew as well?
That's gotten better, but yeah,
Okay.
it's still a little tough, but it's noticeable. Like smiling is still tough. I mean, you learn how to get that kind of crooked smirk, and and then just use the eye being pulled down is kind of throw a wink in there too.
So does it
Um,
get more noticeable if you're under stress now?
I think when I'm extra tired,
Okay.
and it is more of when it's noticeable the most, or like when I'm being super animated, because that was one of the things that really gave me like horrible anxiety when it went from Bell's palsy, when I'm thinking, okay, this is something I just got to deal with for a couple of weeks and then it'll be fine. Then it's like, okay, why hasn't this why isn't this changing? And we think of it as primarily like a cosmetic thing, but it mentally, the effect on us, it's a lot deeper than just that. It's
Right.
not strictly about the appearance, and we're not even necessarily aware of that for me. And this is, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's kind of like this, it changed how I was able to communicate. It took that away. I mean, it's not just our smile, but it's how we non-verbally communicate.
Oh
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
emote the same way that I did before, which is difficult when you like to do, deadpan kind of humor and
Yeah.
voices, and you
Yeah.
can't make the same facial
So only
expressions
look
that
at
you
this
used
side.
to. Yeah. And and I remember one time I was saying something to my daughter. We were about to go somewhere, and like there was kind of a twitch in the muscle, so it kind of like my eye would pull down. It'd be like sort of a wink, and I would joke around with her and do that kind of like wink wink, like this is a joke, and my eye did that. I was like, what? And she's like, oh, okay, dad. And then she gives me like the big wink back. I'm like, no, I'm
No,
really serious
not an
here.
intentional
Wink,
wink.
wink. And she's like, oh yeah, I know, I am too. Wink, wink. I'm like, no.
Oh, that's too
I
funny.
mean, that's a fun way that
Yeah,
affects
yeah.
us, but it can be frustrating.
I
Um,
imagine so, because I mean, it's like when you think about it, like even babies, they will decide what's going on just from our facial expressions and things like that. And if it's not congruent, what's going on, I'm sure it could be a little bit of confusion. And then so people that don't know you kind of actually decide what your emotions are or whatever from your facial expression, so they can get a totally misconception about what you're trying to convey. I can see where that would be very
yeah.
stressful.
And after, how I'm like, okay, well, I just need to get on with my life.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to a bar for happy hour, and I'm just gonna do this. I walk in, like half of my face isn't working, and like the bartender gave me this look of like, should I be serving this guy? It's like, how many of you had already, buddy? Or like, is he having a stroke or what's going on? I'm just like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm like, that's it. I'm out. I've had a good run. I'm just going to go home and be a hermit now. And my anxiety just went through the roof as a result of that. And ended up becoming agoraphobic. And that
So for people that don't know what that is, explain that one as well.
agoraphobic, just the fear of open spaces. Basically, I just didn't like going out in public, and I would basically have a panic attack if I had to be around people. um and there are a few things with that also, because of like how, all right, if the eye is pulling down, it kind of affects your peripheral vision too. So then that's also activating the kind of the fight, flight, freeze anxiety
Mm-hmm.
response as well, because now it's like, oh, you have to be extra vigilant if your vision is now impaired from a side. It's like until it adjusts to that. um and yeah, so I didn't take it well. I remember going to neurologist, having an MRI, just like, why isn't this back to normal? And I'm hoping at that point that there's a brain tumor. I'm
Mm.
like, just tell me that no, there's something there, because that was hope.
Yeah, at
That was
least
a
they could take
way
something out,
out.
right? And it'd be
It's like
fine.
there's something that could be done
Right.
one way or the other, and nope, everything was fine. And I was just like, yeah, no, that's as healed as it gets. And no, and then he had to explain to me for like half an hour why it was a good thing I didn't have a brain tumor. I'm like, you don't get it, man. And you're telling me that's a good thing, but nothing can be done. This is just how I am now. I'm like, oh, that's not good. Um, so that really set me off.
I bet.
Um, and I know, like, okay, you go through that sort of process and you become super anxious, and then
Were
you
you
get
married at that point?
no,
Did you
I
have
was
children
not.
at that point?
I did have a
Okay.
child. I wasn't married.
Okay.
And so yeah, my anxiety just got worse. I'm like, okay, I need to do something about this, because now I was getting depressed. I'm like, this isn't who I am. And as much as I love the idea of just being a hermit and living that hermit life up on the mountain, just meditating all day, that's not who I am. And
Wouldn't be happy
I,
with it for long anyway, would you?
longer than most, I think. But everybody's got their limits.
That's right.
And so I go to the doctor, because I'm like, all right, I know I dealt with anxiety before, and what helped me with that was Xanax. And so this was the last time I had that was like 2007, I think. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll just go and I will ask for more Xanax, please, to help me with these panic attacks so I can be functional out in the world. And I go to the doctor and they're like, nope, no, we're not going to give that. I'm like, why not? It can be habit forming. I'm like, I have no history of substance abuse whatsoever. And I have not had Xanax since 2007, which, they can see in my chart. So this is the thing that worked for me in the past that you won't give to me now. They're like, no, well, he also said that you're depressed. I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, it's situational. And so he's trying to go, well, I'll give you antidepressants. We'll give you all this stuff. I'm like, but I'm not depressed. It's like, I am depressed, but I'm depressed because of the anxiety. The anxiety is the underlying thing, and the
Mm-hmm.
depression comes because of how that affects me. And I'm not a clinical depressive, like that. And he's like, yeah, well, we're gonna go this way. go to the depression, see if that helps the anxiety, and take these antidepressants. And okay, so you won't give me the thing that has been proven to help me with my anxiety in the past because it's habit forming. But now you want me to take pills for something that is only situational because of the anxiety that I then have to take for 3 to 4 weeks before I even start to see any sort of change happen. And then the longer I'm on it, the longer it will take for me to step off of it, because if I just quit taking it, it will fuck up my brain.
Yeah, which sounds more like it's addictive than the
Yeah,
other, right?
I'm like, but that's not habit forming. That's not okay. Yeah, they were not happy with me. He was threatening to fire me as a patient. And I'm like, fine, because you're a quack.
Yeah.
And and I absolutely hate doctors for that very reason. Now it all goes back to this interaction, which was ridiculous, and it was not listening, and it was trying to shove things to, not to mention, I'm like, I was so self-employed at that point as a writer, but I needed my brain to be functional. I couldn't be in this numb cloud that
All right.
antidepressants create. I'm like, that would affect my ability to make a living.
Well,
And
you know what it probably all boils down to? Xanax was not one of the people that supported them and gave them kickbacks for that prescription.
yeah,
You know, of
and
course,
yeah,
you're in
and
Canada. I don't know how it works where
no,
you're at, but
I'm in Seattle.
okay, in Seattle. So I just, I don't know why all of a sudden I was thinking you were in Canada, but anyway, so
It's right up the road.
okay, all right.
um, but yeah, I'm like, okay, you want to do that, but yeah, it probably is the kickbacks, and long enough. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. I have enough bad things to say about them. Anyway, I'm not against doctors. I think, like, if I was dying, if I was actually like having a heart attack or a stroke, or if I had a bone protruding from my arm, or a stab wound, or a gunshot wound, doctors are absolutely amazing at stitching whatever back up.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the most unqualified, dangerous people to be dealing with anything that has to do with emotions, because their training is to remove emotion from it, which
Right,
you have to do to be in that job. But like with, mental health, it's all about emotion, and anxiety is a hardwired emotion. All of that we evolved
right,
to feel that. But when it's firing off, going up to 11 inappropriately, then we need to do something. And in the past, yeah, I take this little pill when I was having a panic attack and go, okay, now I feel normal, because it would just bring you down. I don't even believe in Xanax anymore, because I mean, again, that's a band-aid.
right,
It's not actually dealing with the issue, which is, why is this firing off?
right,
And it can help, and then as we get used to that feeling of it being normal in our body, we don't necessarily need it anymore.
right.
But yeah, it can be habit forming if you're taking it when you don't need it.
And there
Same
are
as
certain
anything.
people that everything's habit forming, you know.
Yeah,
It's just a amazing part of their chemistry. But how did you go from this place right here to suddenly deciding that hypnosis was what you wanted to do?
I'm like, I have to do something. This isn't going to help. This isn't a solution that's going to work for me. And so I went to a hypnotist. I'm like, can this help me?
So had
And
you been hypnotized before that?
no,
No.
no.
So
I mean,
what
any
did you
more than
what
like watching TV or something will
yeah.
hypnotize.
So what let you know that that was the next step? Did you know somebody that did
No, I
hypnosis?
was just out of options.
So you just Googled it?
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Interesting. I'm always curious,
Yeah,
how
I'm
do you
like,
know to
okay,
get to that?
yeah, it was something like it kind of heard about, but again, like with the night, it was something like, is this real or not, kind of thing. There was
Hmm.
a lot of debate about that, but I'm like, it's going to be better than that. I'm like,
Yeah.
at least that there's one more thing for me to try here that isn't going to be this runaround. So then I can say things, and that it really helped. And I was able to start kind of going to soccer games again.
So did you notice after the first session a
Yeah.
difference? That's one of the things I just want to stop for a second and let all of our watchers and listeners know that, you know, even though it can be where it takes several sessions to get things really under control, you can feel a difference in things right away.
Yeah.
And, I think if you look at what it's costing you in your life to be in that little place where you were, I mean, that means that first session that you did in hypnosis was almost, oh, how would you say? I mean, it was invaluable that, you know, it changed things and it began giving you hope. And so I don't know how much you paid for that first session, but it's like when you get back and you look at it, it's like, man, that should have been this amount because it's changed my life in that way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was the only one I did just because of
Okay.
financial constraints.
Mhm.
And the thing is, I'm like, okay, but it was enough to kind of get me doing things. It would have been a lot better had I had more to
Mhm.
finish clearing it out, but getting to a place where I could be functional
Right.
again and start feeling like myself. It was absolutely invaluable. And that's one session. I mean, because it's a journey, and we can start seeing that, but we do need to reinforce it. We need to get our body on board with the changes that's happening. We need to test it out in
Mhm.
the world to make it sink in. And like, change happens in every session, and
Right.
it's not a
Right.
matter of like, oh, did it work or not. No, it's like, is the work complete or incomplete? And depending on what we're going after, there might be more. I mean, like, I'm still doing a lot of work. Well,
Mhm.
when I go back now, like, looking at, but yeah, that was when I wanted a career change. A friend of mine who was a therapist suggested, like, oh, well, you'd be a good therapist. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to grad school because I went for education instead of psychology. And to be a therapist, I would have to go back and get a psychology master. I wasn't going to do that again. It's like, well, you could be a hypnotherapist. So I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, you're
Ding
right.
ding
And,
ding
and
ding
and I
ding.
know it works because it helped me get to the
Yeah.
point where I was comfortable enough to go out and have lunch with a friend of mine because I wasn't before then. And well, I'm like, this ticks all the boxes. I still get to be self-employed. But I'm actually going to feel good about what I'm doing. And if I can help one person not have to go through what I went through, it's all worth it. And that was just like that. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And and I tell you that it's such a great feeling when you like stop wanting something and it's just you you choose it and then you're just being it.
Yeah.
And
And then it's like when you get to that place, just all kinds of doors open for you, People come to you needing what you have, teachers come to you. It's like the heavens said, okay, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah, I mean, like, we're when you're creating value
Hmm.
in the world, whatever way that is, like it, and you feel good about it in your body, it people gravitate towards that. And but yeah, so I had that kind of epiphany where this is this is what I was going to do. And I do self hypnosis all the time, and I've done that. And when I look back now to where I was then, even after, like, I'd felt better after I had that one session for it, but it's like so different with that continued things. I can't even imagine
Hmm.
having a panic attack now.
Yeah.
like what that would feel like. I can't picture it. And
Nice.
it
Well, this
because
is
it's
one of the
just so
things that,
far removed.
yeah, it's one of the things that I tell my clients and stuff too, is that, you can see, just from one session or maybe the second session, this big change and stuff. And it's almost like the people that get an antibiotic because they feel so bad. And then a few days later, they're feeling good and they don't finish their antibiotic because they don't think they need it.
Yeah.
And and it's the same thing, and you're supposed to finish your antibiotic so the germs can't transmute or whatever it is that they do, so that they even become more immune to the antibiotic that you were taking.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people miss the boat when they think that they do one session, it's done. Or, when they get, like, if they come, like most of my people come to me for weight loss or, mindless eating and that kind of thing. And that we can make huge differences in one session, but then we're not done, because the reason all this stuff started wasn't because there was a candy bar laying over here that you decided to eat. It's more than that. And so it takes the thing, and I like to refer to Shrek, where he says, people are like onions, they have layers.
Yeah.
And so as you peel that layer off, there's another thing that we need to do to help you stay on that path.
And that's
And
a never ending process too. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean, I still I get coaching, I get hypnosis and all that stuff. And it's like even the best coaches in the world, the big coaches like Tony Robbins, he has a coach, so and if you think about all sports teams, even the best sports player, they still have to have a coach, because you can't see what you need to change from where you are.
yeah.
Somebody else has to help you with that. So the thing that I love about hypnosis, and the reason I got involved with hypnosis, because I had become a life coach and a health coach, and I was able to make really good changes with people, but it was like doing the hypnosis put it on steroids, man. It was like things happened faster. And, if the people wanted it to go faster, you can make it go faster. But there are people
Mhm.
who still want to go slow, and that's okay too.
And that's, like our subconscious wants to keep us safe, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always a devil thing. It's
Yeah.
like for me with my anxiety, it's like, well, you could go out, but it's like, no, don't go outside. This is better.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't. It's like, well, this goes against like who I am, and it doesn't help me get what I want, but it was protecting me,
Yeah.
in its own way. And I like our most destructive behaviors somewhere in there has some sort of benefit
Yeah. There's a
to it.
secondary gain
They're
somewhere.
not,
Yeah. Yeah.
it thinks it does, and our brains know us better than we know ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they know nothing can trick us more than ourselves. And so that's why we have to, hey, get it on board with what we want,
That's right. Right.
rather than letting it run the show. And when I think about that, like going back, like when I dealt with anxiety before, when 2007, when I would have a Xanax, it's like I wasn't actually solving the issue,
Mm-hmm.
like I have done
Right.
in that post with hypnosis. It was just that, numb it out, take the edge off, and just go about your business and sort of pretend where it's not there. And for a lot of people, probably most people, if not
Yeah.
like 100% of us, that's better to do than actually facing the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. They
And
self-medicate to avoid
yeah,
whatever it is.
and that's whether it's like watching, mindless TV, or whatever, drinking, or you know popping a Xanax. It's just numbing out the stuff instead of accepting it and then processing it and finding out where that sort of kink in the hose is to undo it, so everything is flowing normally again.
Yeah.
And
So I got a question for you. So the hypnosis helped you exponentially. So did it help you more with, and this may be a silly question, I have no idea, but so I'm going to ask it anyway because it's my show.
There's no silly questions, only my dumb answers.
Okay. So was its focus of the hypnosis to help you to be able to go out in public, or was it to help your nerves in your body, or was it to help you to more make peace with where you are to move somewhere else? Does any of that make sense?
Yes. And the answer to all of that is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think initially it was just to, again, like ground that voltage, the emotional charge
Mm-hmm.
that it had. And I think that when it comes to dealing with anxiety, that's a lot of what we're doing. Is like, okay, you're in a situation, we're always going to be uncomfortable. Like I said, we're hardwired for anxiety. We're
Right.
always going to feel, we need it.
Right.
It helps us survive. But when it's firing off inappropriately, like we can recognize it, we can accept it, but we need to just kind of not have it be as high voltage
Right.
as that, and being able to ground it out, so we can be like, okay, yeah, I know this is too much, where this is at, and learning to accept that there will still be discomfort at times. Like I don't like crowds, I never have, but I don't get set off and like, oh God, I can't breathe if I'm in the middle of one,
Yeah.
now like I would. But that doesn't mean I now enjoy
Yeah.
being in a crowd of people. No, I'm not. But and then so it was kind of like doing that, just dissipating it really, and turning the volume down. So that was kind of my focus with the anxiety, so that I could just go about living as normal. Um, from there, it was kind of becoming less self-conscious about the synkinesis, and uh, how my face then looked, and to the point where it's like I don't think about it. And then there was a point where I decided, okay, I really wanted to do work with Bell's palsy, and like help people in the same thing. And I know that there is a way to, possibly reverse it and get
Mm-hmm.
things to go back. It's kind of a crapshoot, but Milton Erickson, I mean, granted, he's like the greatest hypnotist that ever lived, but if he could use hypnosis to walk again after polio, then there must be a way to physically potentially undo the synkinesis, and and actually regain full function of my face, get symmetry back. And that was the difficult thing to kind of figure out, because I mean, like I said, we deal with emotions, and that is a very emotional thing. Like it's us, we're the ones that have to look at ourselves in the mirror every day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that, yeah, it's something else. Or like you see, oh, okay, yeah, I look pretty symmetrical today, then you see a photo and then it's not.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what the hell? But it's the thing, or you think you're emoting one way and it comes out like looking like you just have a fly stuck in your teeth. And it's tough, but I'm like, okay, how can I help people with that, knowing like people want that physical thing? I'm like, I know that there's a way in to potentially do it. How much, I don't know. It's going to vary everybody. I can't guarantee any sort of results
Right.
with that. I mean, like, I mean, there are no guarantees in life. I mean, the only thing is, like, you're going to feel better after a session with me than you did before.
Yeah.
But are we going to actually be able to do that? I'm like, I can't say
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, I just want a proof of concept. And I'm like, I'm gonna start focusing my work on this myself and see how much I can undo. And once I found, oh, okay, the technique that I use actually could impact things physically, and which is funny because I used it all the time for emotional things, and
Okay.
I'm thinking, oh wait, I can actually use it to like help loosen the muscles in my face too. So
So that's
and
what needs to happen, is to loosen the muscles.
well, and that I think it's so more of like where the nerve has to say no, this one should be up here, or
So you need
that
to
sort
wake
of
up
thing.
the receptors, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not really
Okay.
sure.
I'm just, that just kind of,
I'm just hoping that that's the subconscious knows.
okay. Well, it
And
always knows.
yeah, it knows where things were, where it's supposed to be, whatever's happening under the hood. I'm just gonna go. I just need you to kind of put things back so this side works more like this side. And and I was thinking, like, how do I do that? And I've messed around with like, okay, I'm gonna do self hypnosis. I'm gonna do visualizations. And I'm like, I had no idea how long that would take. And I'm like, I was still, I'm like, I have other kind of personal development things let's spend my hypnosis time doing. But what came to me was I had this attachment to outcome on that. I was very attached to being able to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to stop and go, you know what? I'm like, let's say this never changes for for me. Am I gonna be okay with that? Am I gonna be okay if I can't get any changes? And I had to welcome a lot of kind of discomfort, things I hadn't even like thought about at that point that came up surrounding it. And and the big thing was, yeah, welcome it in and sit with it and look at it. And then when I was at the point where I could just kind of laugh about, where I said, you know what, even if I can't get any physical changes for myself or anybody else, I know I can help people. That's the whole reason I do this. I know what it's like to, what feelings are happening when you have this. I know what the challenges are, and I know how to make you, help you feel better about that,
Right.
and not dwell on it, not let it be the end of the world, and get your life back. So that's a place where I know I absolutely can help.
Mm-hmm.
and, and so even if I can't do this other thing, it's not going to stop me from trying. It's not going to stop me from working on it. But I'm like, obviously that can't be the focus. We have to be able to love ourselves just as much if it never ever changes, as much as if there was like 100% recovery and
Right.
everything was
Well,
even
the
better than it was
interesting,
before.
thing is when I'm working with clients and it's about weight and everything, one of the processes that I work on is getting the mental place where they love who they are right this minute.
Hmm.
If nothing's different and they can find a way to love themselves just as they are, then it's easier to make changes,
Yeah,
because you can't change something while you're hating on it.
you can't have what you want.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't want and have at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me, was like, can I love myself if nothing changes,
Yeah.
or just as much as if everything changed? Am I not resigned to it, which we can be in resignation without realizing it, I think, a lot of
Yeah.
times, and thinking we're in acceptance, but true acceptance of that. And as soon as I got into that place of true acceptance, like I felt something shift, and then within a week I was able to whistle again for the first
Nice.
time in like 8 years. And I'm like, holy shit, this is actually
This
happening.
stuff works.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe what a big deal that was for me. I was like
Hmm.
crying. I'm like, I have a video up all over my social media of like that first time. I'm like, I just whistled for the first time in 8 years because
Yeah.
I could not believe it. And and I've just been getting like those little improvements ever since, and getting functionality back, getting symmetry back more and more. Still got a ways to go, but that's okay because I'm just going 1% at a time,
Yeah.
and letting it change, because it's like I'm good either way. It'd be great to have that kind of proof, but as long as there's still things are still happening, as just to show like, even if I don't get any further than this, the point where I've gotten to is amazing. Like, just in this past year that I've really focused on that. It's like we have no idea how much control over those things under the hood we
Hmm.
can actually have. But a lot of it is really getting to that place of acceptance, and you know loving ourselves, letting go of the want of the attachment to outcome, and just being like, yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite authors is Michael Singer. And he has the book, The Untethered Soul. And then he also has a book, The Surrender Experiment.
Okay.
And it's all about surrendering to the outcomes of everything, and taking intuition and moving with intuition, but surrendering, and
Mhm.
how life changes dramatically when you can stop um, um, being the director,
Yeah.
you
and
know?
and and that's a tough thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very tough thing. Yeah, like for me, it was Letting Go by David Hawkins.
Okay.
It was a big thing. I read that. I'm like, oh, and that completely changed how I was doing
Well,
self
one of the
hypnosis.
reasons why I think that is so hard for us, because a lot of times we think if we're surrendering and we love ourselves just like we are, that we're saying that we don't want to change, that we don't want the improvements that we're wanting
Oh,
in our
we're
lives. And that's
we're
not
just
true at all.
letting go of the attachment
Right. Yeah,
to
I
it.
know. But I'm
And
saying that for people in general, and we know that because that's our lingo. But people in general feel like if you say, letting go of the attachment or whatever, that then they're saying, well, then that means that I'm okay with nothing changes and nothing will change. And that's not the case.
right.
It's getting you into a place where if you let go of that attachment, you can let all these things change so much easier.
But I mean, even knowing the lingo, we still have
This is true.
to
This is true.
struggle with that. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, if I look at like the emotional scale. If you have like down at the bottom, you have apathy, grief, and fear, like those heavy inward ones. And then you have lust, anger, pride. Those are like the outward pushing ones. Then you have courage, acceptance, love, and peace at the top. The light ones where flow state happens. And that's up there where it's like you're not thinking, you're just kind of doing everything, and that's great. It feels great. It's like you don't care about stuff, right? That always
Mm-hmm.
say like, oh no, I'm just going. I'm like, okay, it's not bothering me. I don't care. But then you have that apathy. You have that I don't care, where it's heavy, it's shut off, and it's that I'm like, there's such a fine line between that, where you can say, oh yeah, no, that's something I just don't care about. And then it's that sort of, is it apathy, or is it uh peace?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm
Yep.
like, okay,
Have my
I need to
emotional
find
scale
like,
right there.
I'm like, I need to find the words to differentiate the two things. So I think of like, apathy is that, oh, I don't care, like the Eeyore kind of thing.
Eeyore.
And
Yeah.
then, but then when you're without a care in the world, that has a much lighter kind of la 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 sort of
Mm-hmm.
flowing
Yeah. It's no big
feeling
deal.
to it. So I'm like, that's the kind of difference between the two. And like I said, our subconscious is much smarter than our conscious mind, and it will pull every trick in the book. And it will try trick us into thinking that apathy, I don't care, is the without a care in the world. So,
Yeah.
we have to really learn to be vigilant and honest with
That's
ourselves
where people
about
like
like what we're
us come
feeling.
in so handy because we can help people to see what they're doing right now that's not serving them because we can't see our shit when we're in it. And so we help them see it and then we help them see a way to make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's my whole catchphrase is that there's no such thing as problems or only situations.
Right.
and, the great thing about situations is they always change.
Right.
So
Yeah. Perfect. Well, this has been so enlightening, and I'm sure that our viewers and our listeners have gotten a lot of wonderful information from you. So, just
I hope
real
so.
quick, share how they can reach out to you, and if there's anything else that you want to say before we close up shop today.
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
I hope there's something for everybody to take away from this. Definitely read Letting Go by David Hawkins if you haven't. Great book. Completely changed how I was doing my self-hypnosis, and that's sort of become a lot of the cornerstone of like the work I've done with Bell's palsy and stuff.
Yeah.
And using hypnosis to help us let let go of that stuff and move our baseline up the scale, I should say. Can find me at ebhypno.com. It's my website. Links to all my social media on there. I'm also ebhypno on Instagram, Evan Baumgardner on Facebook, Elliott Bay Hypnosis on there too. But yeah, you can find all that on ebhypno.com. And if people are interested in the emotional scale stuff, like that's how we reach our goals, to using that to be able to get the things that we want. I do have a workshop on that, and I'm probably gonna do the next live one sometime in January to help with New Year's resolutions and really set 2024 off on the right foot.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I will when I post this, I will put a link in there to all your stuff. But a lot of times, people are listening and they're not looking at the comments, and so I just wanted you to say so that anybody that was listening could maybe just make a note of it or copy it into their notes or something. So, is there anything else that you wanted to say, or does that feel complete?
That feels pretty complete. Yeah, thank you. It was a ton of fun, and yeah, I could go on all day
Yeah, I
about
know.
this stuff.
Me too. So
It's like,
that's why I love doing podcasts.
I know. I mean, that's the great thing about our work, and also like the difficult thing is the time management of that. Because yeah, if somebody calls us about like just a discovery call, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you everything about it. Here's the whole history of
Yeah.
it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want a college level course on this. I'm like, no, but it's really cool. Because
Well,
yeah, I mean, like it changes people's lives. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I have so enjoyed having you on here today and letting you share your journey, because I think it's really, really important for people to know that there's so much more that hypnosis can do. And it just gives them one more spoke in the wheel to know
yeah,
that what it can do.
like I was really skeptical about the physical aspect of it. Like emotional, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing for that. But when I started seeing like the physical changes, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And but again, a lot of that came from the emotional processing of it.
Right.
So yeah, that's I guess that would be one more thing I would have to say to everybody listening is like, don't discount the way our emotions affect us physically.
Yeah.
I mean, and we see that with stress, so it shouldn't be that big of a jump. But I know, like, if you asked me about that like 3 years ago, I'd have been like, nah, well, maybe a little bit, but nah. this is completely, now it's like, oh, my knee is sore. It's not just because of the weather. I'm not discounting that as being part of it. It definitely is. But then I'm also kind of like, all right, well, there must be an emotional thing
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going on
I
too.
agree. Louise
And
Hay
as I start peeling that onion,
has a great book about that too. If you've never
Louisa May.
seen Louise Hay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Okay. Cool.
But
Cool.
yeah, so something I definitely will have to check out
Yeah.
now, because
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, this stuff really does impact things. I know, because yeah, I was having a knee problem, and then I'm like just doing my own self work, and then it's like, okay, as that kind of moved up in my body, my knee quit hurting, and then I got I
Yeah.
got a real bad head cold. But that was all.
But you got it out, right?
But then the knee pain just went away. Like,
Yeah.
it's still not perfect, because there still is like the weather aspect. It was nothing like it was before. I'm like, this is, yeah, this is really crazy.
Yeah. Mind blowing. I know. I love it. All right. So, thank you again for
Thank
being
you, Vickie.
here. And I want to say one last thing to our viewers and our listeners, and that is the best way to predict the future is create it. What are you creating? Mwah.